Ghislain called out to Ricardo, who promptly responded. Ghislain instructed him to bring the merchants protesting outside the castle. Ricardo, taken aback, hesitated, but Ghislain, now smiling with a hint of madness, assured him it would help them make a great deal of money. While the cancellation of the festival had left merchants and tourists alike frustrated, Ghislain believed an event like this would be enough to rekindle their excitement and soothe tensions. The scene shifted to a stage surrounded by an eager crowd. Ghislain and Cain stood ready to duel, their confrontation attracting a throng of spectators. Many were thrilled at the prospect of Ghislain getting humiliated. The excitement reinvigorated the town, with merchants reopening their stalls to sell goods to tourists. Among the crowd, a chubby merchant shouted for bets to be placed, certain Cain's victory was inevitable. The merchants, confident of Cain's dominance, bet heavily in his favor. Cain rested his massive sword on the ground and questioned why Ghislain had turned a sacred duel into a marketplace spectacle. With a sinister grin, he warned that his sword wouldn't stop, even if Ghislain surrendered. Ghislain, unfazed, replied that enough people had gathered, signaling the start of the duel. Just as the fight was about to commence, the spy interjected, claiming that a proper bet couldn't proceed. The chubby merchant revealed to the crowd that no one had bet on Ghislain, a fact that surprised no one. Many believed that betting on him would be foolish, given the apparent outcome. Cain mocked Ghislain, laughing that even his own people didn't trust him. The chubby merchant suggested altering the bet to predict how long Ghislain would last against Cain. At that moment, Scovin, supported by Ricardo, stepped forward and placed a bag of gold on the table. He declared his bet on Ghislain, shocking the crowd. Following him, Elena approached and dropped an even larger bag of gold. She announced her intention to bet on her brother, surprising even Ghislain. When asked if the amount was sufficient, the merchant confirmed it was. Belinda, standing nearby, reminded Elena that she had advised against such a move. Cain, irritated by the delay, demanded the duel begin. The referee signaled the start of the fight. Ghislain reminded Cain that, as his elder cousin, it would look strange for him to make the first move. This statement confused Cain, who responded that it was far too late for Ghislain to act like an older brother. As the referee gave the command, Cain leapt forward, using his momentum to swing his heavy sword at Ghislain. He managed to block the attack, but was surprised by the sheer weight of the blade. Cain, smiling arrogantly, taunted Ghislain, saying he had stooped too low to act like an elder sibling. Using the hilt of his sword, Cain shoved Ghislain back and immediately followed up by swinging the hilt toward Ghislain's head. Ghislain dodged Cain's attack by ducking low, but Cain immediately followed up with a powerful kick. Although Ghislain evaded the strike, the force of Cain's legs shattered the ground beneath them. The crowd gasped, awestruck by Cain's raw strength. It was clear that Cain wasn't giving Ghislain even a moment to counterattack. With a cocky grin, Cain reveled in his own power. Ghislain noted his cousin's pride, but the sight did not intimidate him. Belinda, however, began to panic after witnessing Cain's display. She clutched Elena's arm and urged her to stop the fight. Nearby, the spy smiled knowingly, confident that it was already too late. He understood Cain's strategy well. His overwhelming strength and relentless attacks would force any opponent to focus solely on evasion. Exhaustion would eventually leave them vulnerable, and Cain would seize that moment to end the fight. It was a strategy Cain had perfected, and he had always emerged victorious this way. As Cain's attacks became more aggressive, Ghislain continued to dodge, displaying surprising agility. Cain, noticing this, remarked that his cousin was as slippery as ever. He acknowledged that Ghislain's skills had improved since their last encounter. Switching tactics, Cain grabbed his sword by the blade and swung the hilt at Ghislain. He mocked his cousin, claiming that Ghislain had always been good at running away since they were children. Ghislain managed to block the attack with his sword, but Cain used the hilt to grab and toss him into the air. The crowd watched in stunned silence, assuming this was the end for Ghislain. The spy smirked, convinced of Cain's victory. As Ghislain descended, he calmly muttered that he had wanted to go easy on Cain. Unfortunately, Cain had crossed the line. Gathering mana into his legs, Ghislain controlled his landing and immediately charged at his cousin. Cain was caught off guard by Ghislain's sudden burst of speed and gasped in pain as Ghislain's blade struck his stomach. The spy, stunned, realized that Ghislain had condensed mana into his legs to regain stability and move swiftly. Ghislain chastised Cain, calling his swordsmanship ignorant. He accused Kane of believing he was invincible simply because his opponents cowered at his displays of strength. Taking a stance, Ghislain declared that he would open Kane's eyes. Enraged, Kane rushed forward with his sword. Ghislain countered by kicking the blade to push Kane back. Before Kane could recover, Ghislain leaped to the side, avoiding the weapon, and delivered a precise strike down Kane's shoulder to his hand. As Kane thrust his sword forward in retaliation, Ghislain sidestepped and pressed the blade down with his foot. Capitalizing on the moment, Ghislain landed a near-fatal cut close to Kane's neck. Blood trickled from the shallow wounds Ghislain had inflicted earlier, shocking the audience into silence before cheers erupted. No one had expected Ghislain to display such skill. Many in the crowd began regretting their bets on Kane, while Elena gleefully pointed out the turn of events to Belinda. Scovin smiled as he watched, while Kane, noticing his wounds, realized they were shallow. He deduced that Ghislain could have inflicted far greater harm, but had deliberately held back. Confusion clouded Kane's mind as he failed to comprehend how his cousin had attained such a level of swordsmanship. Ghislain glared at his cousin and tossed his sword aside. To the astonishment of everyone present, he declared that the gap in their skill was too great to entertain the crowd. Turning to Kane, Ghislain stated that he would fight him barehanded. Kane, now visibly irritated, demanded an explanation. With a calm demeanor, Ghislain explained that he intended to use this duel as an opportunity to educate his cousin. Rolling up his sleeves, he declared that the lesson would be delivered with his bare knuckles.
So, friends, this chapter comes to an end. What will happen next? We'll uncover it in the next chapter. Don't forget to rate this chapter out of 10 in the comments. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.